Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's episode. The title is there free will in deep sleep? I decided to speak about free will because there were certain comments on it. I thought it's an interesting thing. It's one of the great, you can say, one of the great questions of philosophy to wonder where the edge of freedom is, or pretty much how it started. When I think of free will, let's first start off by looking at how the dictionary defines it, and I'll tell you how I perceive it personally. Um, it's like probably freedom to do. Let's see. And then I'll get into what I mean by the difference between an existential approach to the free will and an experiential approach, and how there's a sort of separation there. So hang in there, guys. Okay. You know, the dictionary defines free will the power of acting without the constraint of necessity or fate, the ability to act at one's own discretion. That's not a bad, like, I can work with that. So it says the ability to act at one's own discretion. So what does that mean? That means if somebody else does something for you, and compared to you doing something for yourself, it's as if, even though if somebody does what you want, you still, it wasn't done through your free will. It's kind of like, all right, I'll set up the context. In the moment, there's an objective component. Right now, if I was to ask myself, kind of look at myself, if I have free will, yes, I do, because there can be an effort that can move. So any moment I consider that there is movement, that movement must be identifiable to an individual consciousness. The whole thing about the subjective evolution, how we are aware of ourselves, the sense of ourself, it's kind of like we have a four-dimensional awareness of three-dimensional space. That means if even if you consider the fourth dimension as time, so for example, I'm sitting here, and then tomorrow I come and sit here, and are those two moments the same? We can say no. Time separates them as a dimension. That means time is allowing us to experience the same place as a journey. You know, individual consciousness is very crucial to being a person. That means at some point there has to be a separation between who the person is, and other phenomena around them. It's like, why do I, when I look at that cup and when I look at my hand, how is it that this hand is mine and that cup is not mine, not my hand? That distinction between an object such as your body and any other object. So it's a sort of conscious awareness that there is something. So it's kind of strange, but the value of life is in our eyes. In It's within it. You know. And a talk I was inspired to give, and hopefully I'll give it soon, was that love is not a physical thing. I suddenly realized this very kind of unique thing, that it's like, why is religion so focused on love? Why is many things kept by love? Why is it crucial? What is this love? What are the forms of love? Even Alan Watts speaks about a spectrum of love, you know? But I ultimately noticed love is something that is, it from within it comes out. It is something that, I don't consider love to ever be a physical thing. And so this is why some people suggest kind of like your love remains afterwards. That means it's like anything objective. Like, it's kind of easy to say that what has not changed since the beginning of your birth till this moment. Me personally, I consider everything has changed except the viewer. I consider there is a presence in the moment that it doesn't matter what happens, the moment is being the moment regardless. From the beginning, before I was born, this moment was being that moment, the moment, and even after I'm gone, this moment will remain to be the moment, So eternity is an interesting idea, but nobody ever said it is for an individual archetype. Nobody ever said eternity is like, it's like saying an eternal soul is like saying an eternal unknown variable. So what it is it's in containment, it is in identity. We feel we have free will because we can see an individual. That means if you had no body right now, yet your mind was here, what would it be? It's like, what would the free will be? You know, if I consider free will in front of my eyes, it is movement oriented. You know, that means the big main thing that I'm free to do is move. But when I look at internally, what is the freedom? It's perceive. That means when I look at things, it's like there's a will of how my attention moves. Same way my hand grabs a cup. When I'm thirsty, I want to get water. So it's like the same instant my hand moves, I have the free will to be for the movement in the space. It's like with the same instantaneity, sometimes our subjective realms are evoked. I think the question, is there free will in deep sleep, is one of the most fascinating questions because I have experienced free will in my dream state. That means if you say you have free will in the dream, you'll be like, yeah, man, in the dream. Like, I've had a dream where I've moved. Do you know what that means? That means existentially, there is no free will, there's just stuff hovering. But experientially, this stuff gets meaning, gets direction and orient in regards to the individual moving. So we can think of existence as the space. Space doesn't have a free will, it's just space. Do you know? And then what moves in the space, the experience that is moving it through existence, is the will. So if I was to think about free will in deep sleep, I would say, in some sense, there is an inseparability between individuality and collectivity in deep sleep. Know? For example, in dream states, the mind, the will of the mind is there. That means I've moved in dreams, woken up, and then I'm like, whoa, was my body asleep, but my mind was simulating a body, and I was living in it. You know. So the mind has will. Will is kind of like, if there's space, you can move. You have free will. If there's the space for it, you have free will. Right now, if, there's an object here. I can move this object, put it on this table. I have the free will to do so. But if can I change my DNA and like shapeshift into like beams of light? Like, no. So I'm saying it's like so this is why I said existential versus experiential. I feel that we need to distinguish between the meaning of these terms prior to comprehending what free will is, actually. Because if free will is the mind, and the mind has the freedom to dream, so you can say you have free will internally, evocationally, all the time. You are free to evoke your subjective realms. Well, when it comes to objectivity, when it comes to the laws of nature, we have as much free will as we understand those laws. That means if the store is closed, do you have free will to go in there? I mean, you kind of do, but you see at the same time there is a denial, there's a restriction, you know? It's kind of like, think of it this way. Before we're thinking if we have free will, we're thinking we are something. That something is kept by rules. What are those rules? Our most immediate axioms on kind of way we have put life in an axis, you know? So this is the cool thing. People in this life don't have the privilege only to, for example, raise children. They're actually raising themselves too. It's like I was always fascinated that the human being is so able, it raised itself from the dirt, you know? So I saw the progression of it. It was kind of like an infusion of light, matter, and space. Now we think light is a particle. We think of light as particles, or as waves, you know. But the thing is, it is very hard to pinpoint the explanation of a multidimensional system if there is a possibility that there are dimensions inaccessible. In the Ribhu Gita, which is I'll share the link here. Uh, like here, I'll just put it Ribhu Gita. Guys, just search this. Search this and here. In the Ribhu Gita, they spoke about there being four states in this existence. Once for the human being. You see, one state is your waking state. So, welcome to the waking state. I am speaking to you in your waking state and my way. You know, so there's the waking state of consciousness. Then there was the dream state, then deep sleep. And when you go see in yogic thought, when they realized there was no identity in deep sleep, it was as if it was a profound thing. Now, let me tell you what they said. They said there were these three states, so waking, dream, deep sleep. Then they said there's a fourth state that is witnessing all three at all times. So, what does that mean? That means it's like your collective being, the collective angle to your existence, is perceiving its individual regardless. That means it's like the third dimension is aware of the second dimension. The fourth dimension is aware of, for example, the third dimension. The fifth dimension is aware of the fourth. Do you see? So it's like, in regards to lesser worlds, we have free will. When I look at an ant, pretty much my ability as a being is like a god to that ant. Not a god, but like it's like the ant can get crushed or the ant can be kind of left to be in its nature. So when the world looks like an ant, there is free will. When you look like an ant, there is no free will, you know? The human being is not just one thing, guys. There's never one thing because language is a dualistic technology. And what that means is think of it this way: whatever definition, you know, like you have read, there is an anti symmetrical definition to that. So that means every moment in my life, I have perceived a good person as myself. You know, every time I've thought I'm good, I could see the bad. The bad came in view. Anytime I thought I was bad, I could totally see what was good. You know, what was when I say what was good, I mean like I could see the difference. So what you identify as now, you know, you are tending not to accept. You're tending to accept that and watch the other. You know, I feel that the definition of free will, if it's still individual oriented, that means I could say it's like if I'm the cosmos, then I have free will. Everything is my will. If I feel I'm the whole cosmos, you know, I'll feel like yeah, guys, I'm moving the sun. You know, that's why you should subscribe. I'm joking. But but the thing is, I'm saying it's with identity, right? So we're noticing that our free will's condition or unconditional nature is dependent on what we're identifying. If I identify with temporary existence, by the nature of that identification, the inner perception will be that it's as if it's temporary. I've accepted the temporary first, you know? It's kind of like, think of it this way. It's like before, uh, imagine a child is born in this world. Now, this child is having experiences in this existence, and this child is interpreting, identifying its existence in accordance to its experience. Now, if the child is given imagery, exposed to experiences that bring the worst self to the child, that means it's kind of like coin flip, really. That means the young child is either being kind of embraced by the world or disembraced, not embraced, like rejected. And what does that mean? That this is youth, very young, like 14, like child psychology. I'm speaking about. I'm kind of noticing like the thing is, it's like it's you trust the system because you're additionally dependent on it. As you experience the system, it's like as you get a definition of order, you then start getting definitions of chaos. That means the moment the child's mind becomes ordered, it becomes an independent being because now it has to confront a chaos of its own distinction, of how the child distinguishes the chaos. So it's like before you can be a soul, you have to be a person. It's like before you can be something more than the body, you got to be the body. Because if the body wasn't there, how would you even talk about something more? It's like the soul doesn't need to speak, guys. Did you know? The soul is silence, is pure silence. It's not. It's like the space that holds matter. Your awareness is holding yourself. Hence, we call it self-awareness. So my relationship with my awareness is experiential. My relationship with myself is existential. That means the more I identify as an object, the more I feel the solidity and the hardness of life. The more I identify as that which is okay, I'm looking at this body. I'm not denying this physical existence. It's right here in front of me. Like my body is an evidence of my own existence. But what then? And as you see existence continues, the experience doesn't stay static. So your mind is like a river, your body is like the rocks in the river, you know? The material universe can appear as like I always saw it. There was a sort of strange I can't say iridescence, but like a strange awe that I saw between that moved between the branches. The river that moved between the rocks. There's something there where it's a relationship of static phenomena with a dynamic mover. Now that river is us, is our mind, is that consciousness of it. I have also experienced moments where my free will transformed. That means it's like it's like man thought he was the center of the universe, then through the efforts of people like Copernicus, Galileo, we realized, nah, we're not the center of the earth, center of the universe. So experience has a gravitational pull. This is kind of strange, but it's like our minds are pulling our bodies from another dimension. Terence McKenna did speak about the transcendental object at the end of time that is a sort of attractor where novelty is kind of generated. But for me, it's like we have thought only as a species of relationships in the dimensions of our visibility. How many people study the invisible? How many people wonder about it? So this question is actually directed at an unknown sky. Is there free will in deep sleep? Well, we know in deep sleep there is no sensory perception to identify with. So if there is free will, it would mean the source of free will is it would not be the free will we understand. It would be a sort of freedom of presence. All right, guys, to continue. I mean, in my own school of thought, as I've said in other talks, I see existence as my objective realm. Um, Amel, I'll in the chat section, I will definitely tell you. Yeah, I've had some lucid dreams. Um, and I've experienced different seasons of lucid dreams. I'll tell you that. That's awesome. Okay, okay. So Amel, listen to what I'm saying now because I'm going to paint the context um, of how I have found a way to interpret that which is more than matter and what we can do with it and what is the phenomenology of the mind. You see, our mainstream, we cannot ignore this. We have to start from the objective dimension because the objective dimension is like the first information. So if it's as if imagine uh, the exploration for what is actually going on in this world is a sort of activity. It's a sort of process or it's a sort of test. Now, on this test, there's information given. This is why for me, it's not just what has happened to me as a human being, that the content of it, but the sequence, as if kind of all my experiences throughout the day, I'm like, what is life trying to say? What is the sequencing of it's like strangely I felt like the experiences I had, their sequence mattered. Something I've had since my childhood is that I cared for the sequence of phenomena, of the evocation of phenomena. So I consider an objective realm, I consider a subjective realm, I consider these to be two eyes that see the same. What does that mean? That means there's a simultaneity between objectivity and subjectivity. That means in this current moment that I'm existing, as much as it's evident to me that there is a physical component to the moment, it is also evident to me that what is aware of this physicality does not appear physical. It's not just sometimes to declare a sort. Sometimes you can't um, criticize something that is evolving. That's what I'm kind of saying. Anyways, so the subjective and objective realm. At the same time, simultaneously, I feel there is a space self. When I say a space self, that means your whole moment of being is actually you too. That means your mind right now is being your moment. you know your mind is life. And this is why we consider when we notice animate movement in the inanimate, just the ability to identify something animate is the intelligence. So it's kind of like we find ourselves in a plane of existence. Now, the pilot is not made of metal like the body of the plane. It has shape and form, but it's not made of metal. That means the plane of existence the conscious viewer finds himself in is um, think of it this way: experience is an effort to observe existence separate from it. So, guys, now that I've spoken about the subjective realm, and because it's a realm, that means there is a self and a world there too. That means from realms you can endlessly extract senses of self from, like image, like self is ultimately behind your eyes, a subtle image. So when it comes to lucid dreaming, guys, I have to tell you like some of the experiences. So Amel, you in the chat section who asked about lucid dreams. Okay, so my family when I was younger would go on trips, you know, and there were long flights. And I remember once we went to a place called, my family, like I was young, we went to Metz, somewhere between France and Italy, and some town. And so I remember we went there, and that night in the hotel, I would just lie down, but every time I would sleep, there would be suddenly like my body would freeze. It would be as if like my body would sleep, but my mind would suddenly wake up before my body, so it would be kind of like a sort of sleep paralysis. So I've experienced a ridiculous amount of sleep paralysis, and then until I realized the solution to it. The solution, and it was somebody, I remember reading something that somebody gave me the solution to how to get out of sleep paralysis, and it's so easy. Most people in sleep paralysis, regardless, forget the content of this, like don't storify the sleep paralysis, just look at it as a phenomena, and you'll see it's like your attention is it's like your mind's up before your body. Okay, and another explanation is your body creates this chemical that makes your whole physical body inactive, so that when you dream, you don't start running in your bed. You know what I mean? If you're running in a dream. So there is also this explanation for sleep paralysis, as in there's a sort of chemical maneuver of the body, and that chemical kind of balance is like there's a certain chemical the body is sleep paralysis is the body's way of um, maintaining itself, you know. Anyways, so there's different views of seeing it. So I would have the sleep paralysis, and so this was the solution. You start breathing. That's it. That means any moment your mind wakes up earlier than your body, that means your body is still asleep, so you can't move it. So what happens? You can still breathe. Breathing happens 24/7. Any person conscious of their breathing can be also conscious in their deep sleep. You know, the breath is the greatest clue to the soul. Being aware, just learning to listen to your own breathing, and when your own breathing becomes bliss for you, you just sitting down and listening to your own breathing, your own rhythmic breathing, you know, you're going to suddenly see your body heals itself. Any person who instantly becomes conscious and grateful of just phenomenology, and how can I tell you, when your breath is is like the invisible string keeping your mind and body intact. The breath is the most divine thing. This is why it's like, you know, we gasp when something shocks. When something shocks us, we're like, you know, like it's like the inhale's too much, you know. So, anyways, be conscious of your breathing. Just listen to your own breathing, and you'll snap out of the sleep paralysis very quickly. Your body will just realize, just ignite a mental intention, and the body's gonna wake up. You know, so that's the thing. For me, when it was happening on that trip in Europe, it was ridiculous. I would wake up, you know, and then I would go back to sleep, and then sleep paralysis again. I would go back, wake up, I would go back to sleep, it was as if that town didn't want me to sleep. It was strange. It was like something there in that, and it's definitely has a chemical explanation in the sense of jet lag and whatnot. But anyways, so I became ever since that young experience at a young age with sleep paralysis, I became sensitive. I became sensitive to the content of the mind, how the mind animates a realm. And what is going on, you know. My experience of a lucid dream was in my youth. I had one experience where one morning, this is before actually a lucid dream. I could tell you it's a lucid experience, but it's not a dream. So I woke up earlier in the moment, and my attention, not my, like I wasn't seeing a ghost or a body ghost or ethereal kind of astral self or something. My eyes are not owned by shape. My eyes move shape in my inner realms. And it took me a while to understand that it is we have authorization to look at things in multiple ways. Yet society and civilization is conditioning us to accept only this way and that way, and not permitting us to see that we are not just in dimensions, we add the dimensions. We add the dimensions. And whoever you are in your life, this is the reality. The more different types of things you do, the more different dimensions get added. The more same thing you do, the more you're staying in the same dimension. So anyways, so that experience was, my attention was in the corner of the room, and I saw, I was very, this is in Iran, guys. I was young, and I saw, for example, my mother brought my laundry, you know, and she put it in the room, and I was asleep, but I kind of like I was seeing the whole thing from the corner of the room. So you can say my body what identifies with this physical biological thing, but my mind is identifying, is treating the whole moment as its body. So the attention is, you might not believe it, but it's not limited to just the physical body, your attention, you know not your eyes, not your sight. That means you can close your eyes and your attention can still be on things, but you can it doesn't mean you need your eyes only. The biological eyes give you a certain range of access. Even if you see the color spectrum here, let me look this up. um, okay, what frequency can human beings see? So it says flicker that is visible to the human eye will operate at a frequency of up to 80 hertz. Okay, that's interesting. Sorry guys, I'm just looking up the exact wavelength. Like, it's a certain range, it's like we don't see infrared, but some animals do. Dogs see, for example, black and white, you know. Also, religious moralists also see good and bad. So it's same as black and white. Joking. Okay, so it says color perception is a part of the larger visual system and is mediated by a complex process between neurons that begins with differential simulation of different types of photoreceptors by light entering the eye. Those photoreceptors then emit outputs that are then propagated through many layers of neurons and then ultimately to the brain. So, by the nature of neurons moving in the brain, color is a construction of light relating to us. That means it's not just the color we see, the light is also having an influence. It's starting a sort of chain reaction in regards to these, as it says, photoreceptors. So let me find the number here. Normalized response spectra of human cones to monochromatic. Oh my god, what is this? Eye color sensitivity. Um, all right, guys, I don't know, but it's a certain range. That was my whole point. It's a certain range of perception you have, visual perception, your biological eyes. So anyways, that was a incident. I'm kind of giving you the progression of different experiences I've had in regards to my cellular planes, So now the lucid dream. I remember once I saw this thing about lucid dream. I was never fascinated by astral traveling. For me, there was something about that concept of astral traveling that felt too simple. It felt too simple to me. That it's like this same character, that it's like to give a personality. I come from a, like, My school of thought is the soul doesn't have a personality. I don't consider, believe it or not, transmigration of an eternal individuality and eternal collectivity. Like I don't see. I'm not playing the game of karma. Some people can, though. You know, many beings are given permission to play the game, but you can choose what game you do. And believe it or not, sometimes it becomes not your choice when your experiences have given you certain information. So I remember sitting down and I had read this thing about testing a lucid dream. How do you test the lucid dream from inside the lucid dream? And what you do is you hold your nose in the lucid dream, and you suddenly notice that you're continuing to breathe. So I remember the lucid dream I had was I was in my room. I was kind of taking a nap in the afternoon. I was on my bed, and what happened was that I appeared in my own room, but my room and the surface of it was colored differently. It wasn't per se beautiful. It was a dark experience, actually. You know, it was more rough and chaotic. It's as if I saw kind of my room in a worser dimension. You know, from a worser dimension, I was perceiving my own room, how it looks. You know, so in the dream but in that moment in the lucid dream, I was aware, and I closed my nose, and I heard myself breathing, and it was a cool experience. In my dream I held my nose, and I could still hear. And it was, the thing is, it's like, ultimately, lucid dreaming, it's not, there is no, I don't want to claim too much choice in it. You know, that means dreams are not things. Sometimes in most dreams tend to be automatic. It's like they're automated. It's as if the dream all knows how to happen. Do you know? But in a lucid dream, still your mind is simulating a lot of it. Do you know? But you have certain free will in the range of the mind. So it's kind of hilarious. It's like your mind is creating the world, then your mind is giving itself permission to be in the world or not. But your mind is creating the world. That means any moment in your life you have had fear or some sort of kind of barrier, internal barrier, that was self-induced. Do you know? This is the worst part of mistakes, is that we made them. That's the worst part of mistakes, you know. We actually made them. We received the context of inter, 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 interpretation. There we go. So that was one dream of a lucid dream. Another was one where I haven't had many dreams lucid. I mean, I haven't cared about my free will sometimes in dreams. I have cared about my content. A lucid dream means that you want to move as your mind. Okay? But if you still identify so you want to move as a body in your mind. Let's say that's what lucid dreaming is, or astral projection and all that, you know? Now, of course, guys, you got to consider I am one person in a universe of a billion trillion stars. There's 8 billion human beings, and I can share what I have access to perceiving, you know? That means my perception so far. And so far, my whole thing is I stopped wanting a sort of individual enlightenment. Individual enlightenment became meaningless. It became meaningless for me, because it was like you're becoming personally enlightened, but you are a social, and you are a creature that is defined by the other. That means it's like you can't reject the world and then get enlightened. So this was when I looked at yogic thought, I'm like, some people got it very easily, but some people, they thought it's an action. When you think it's an action, you think it has to happen in a certain way. Anytime your mind goes into that has to happen mentality, do you know, it becomes like you become like a goon. You know, you become savage. You know, it's like it took us 4 billion years to, you know, not act like really animals. And really, a person's decision is either taking them back into the cave, or it's taking them beyond the clouds. That means we either advance as a civilization or we die with the inability to organize. That means imagine we mess up as a species, and then our great great grandchildren are suffering the consequences, and they're in that apocalyptic moment, and they're looking back and they're like, what the fuck did our ancestors do? You know? What did our ancestors do to this place? I think the children of the future generations are going to be so much smarter than us, that if we are not kind and compassionate, they're going to think we were idiots. Because our whatever we see now, it's like, think about the pioneers 1,000 years ago. You know, for example, I'm living in Canada. Imagine the first settlers. So that was a. We look back and we see a sort of simple life, simplistic technologies, kind of very just maintenance of the life. You know, but we are so ahead of that time that we see all the things they're missing out on. And I'm pretty much saying the future generations can see what we are missing out on. So if we just care to look at what's happening now, then, we'll stand in grander lights in the eyes of the future generations. So my focus isn't about, I'm not here to tell people, like, you can exchange a belief for another belief anytime. It's like right now, in modern, I could say, philosophical circles, or just pretty much what's happening with the human being, that we're all worshiping language to such a degree that it's becoming story transference. So it's like the person's processing the information of their life into a narrative, and that character in a narrative is living in a grander narrative, and it's like 8 billion human beings in one world, but when you go to the inner realms of each being, it's like 8 billion versions of the earth. And I think it has to do with preference too. For example, um, Amel, in the chat section, I'll tell you, like, my preference wasn't to find a cooler story. When you realize your mind can generate stories, like generate subjective content, or receive it, or extract it, or whatever way you like to see it, it's like once you see the subjective realms can animate, you become a billionaire of thoughts. So imagine you're not a billionaire, but you have a billion thoughts. So if you have so many thoughts that after some point you stop searching, it's like you get so much. The person looking for truth, imagine, gets so much truth that it stops looking for truth, and then comes the evolution of the vision to the uh, greater tasks. I feel there's a mystery while every person is believing a story of the world. There's a mystery. There's a living unknown mystery. The unknown it's like Friedrich Nietzsche said, God is dead and man killed him. You know, that means the moment man first got the concept of God, that means it was a 6th century attempt to personify the cosmos. The movement. It was like, you can say, the same way scientists looked at what's happening in the earth and made laws, you can say it was as if it was a narrative that began to become the mind of the world. I think so. The religious person is living. I've been in cultures. Um, uh, I could tell you this. It's like you are living in the mind of God, but God shape, and you are thinking, what is God? And you see, they say God is uh, revealed in what the messengers have said. So you go see what the messengers have said. At the same time, you're thinking, okay, so I don't have the same eyes as the messenger. How can I see the same religion? Do you know? So eventually you see, how would I say it? It's like faith in the presence of the moment, and you can choose to have the ideology be conditional or unconditional. You can be present in a moment where thought doesn't have to define your condition, just the objectivity alone. It's like, on some level, sure, I'm using the alias Mr. Within, and giving these talks online. But on another level, I'm just atoms, guys. I'm just atoms. Anybody who's ever judged me, they've been judging atoms. Do you see? So the mind is creating various angles to itself by choosing to be a new effort or choosing to stand in the comfort. I'm just simply saying that astral projection, any sort of destiny or to the soul, these are stories. And there is that living unknown is so experiential that it can't be contained in language. There is a way to experience, like your mind is, it's like, think about it. Does your mind select its state, or does the state your mind in, let me say it like this. Does yourself select your state of mind, or does your state of mind, does your sense of self project your state of mind, or does your state of mind project your sense of self? For me, I have noticed in navigation, I will tell you, we are not creatures that have free will 24/7. In deep sleep, the concept of free will doesn't exist. So if the concept doesn't exist, that means the question has broken before we have found the answer. Do you know? So some questions, they are hollow. Some questions, before, like, the answer is the recognition of that hollowness. It's like you got to be very discreet in this life, and I'm still learning this every day, of how much the person chooses. Because for me, of course, yeah, let's say we have freedom. We cheer on freedom till the end of time. There's nothing wrong with having freedom in this world. But when we look at it, how much freedom does a surfer have on a surfboard on a wave? How much freedom? Its freedom is based on its maintenance and rhythmic abidance with the ecosystem. And I'm telling you, your mind is surfing your body on unknown waters. So if your mind chooses to define itself by matter, and science is taking a rational approach towards this, the rational approach means that we have to index the whole cosmos to be certain. So science is not, I don't know, like, I don't know what this means, but it's like, what is certainty when you can't see the edge of the world? That's another way of saying it. What is certainty when literally there is black holes? It's like, you know what I mean? Black holes are like the funniest thing for me. It's like the theoretical, like, so let me say that it's like the we built rockets, and we're gonna truly see what's behind or beyond these clouds. Like, people were so fascinated. Then they go and they're like, yo, is that a black hole? Just a black hole in space, a phenomenon where its gravitational pull, once passed through the event horizon, is so much that light cannot. It's like the black hole is like light's non-existence. Not light's non-existence. Kind of like if a person went through the black hole, I think the intensity and pressure of whatever change hits is so instantaneous. It would be like vanishing. Inside a black hole, you are. It's like it's too dark to see. And imagine, guys, there was a switch somewhere in the cosmos that when we hit this switch, all the black holes suddenly started glowing. Imagine. Once we are aware of the language threshold, we are aware of that which is non-dual. I have divided the world in, I say, 0 dimension, 1 dimension, 2 dimension, infinite dimension. So what does that mean? That means I took mathematical language and I kind of said, why haven't we done this earlier? Right? With these four numbers that every person knows, you can totally see how all of reality is contained. And the fourth number, when I say, it's like there's the first dimension, second dimension, 0 dimension, 1 dimension, 2 dimension, and then I say infinity because after you have observed duality, you can infinitely move. If you have observed nothing more than a singular duality, you can't move. That means infinity is like, it's like even if somebody, even if your mind found a greater way it would be in, it would not be able to bring it down to earth. When Carl Jung said, um, until we make the unconscious conscious, it will direct our life and we will call it fate. So that kind of making the unconscious conscious is bring. I feel these four symbols, 0, 1, 2, and infinity. 0, 1, 2, infinity. uh, if you're think of it this way. I got it. This is the best approach, guys. I figured it out. Instead of considering astral projection, instead of considering a certain narrative and a context to other dimensions, let us say we are something that's existing and wants to know the totality. Whatever life can give it access, it's like we look at that, you know? So what that means is instead of trying to astral project, just get to know the whole dimension, everything that is accessible to you in the present. You know, that's kind of studying your mind, realizing what is here. And it's a very fascinating time, guys, because the human being is now becoming more in the mainstream. It's becoming more collectively kind of acknowledged that there are non-linguistic states. So that means it's like imagine a person being emotional, and when you ask him why are you emotional, the person says I don't know. And you see the reason they don't know is because it's like only the emotion has appeared in the moment, emotion from that kind of memory, you know? I wish I had a whiteboard right now. And I wish this was a video. anyways, guys, we want to acknowledge what is here. We have been given a narrative that we are temporary beings, and because we're only identifying with matter. So for me, materialism is temporal worship. It's worshiping the temporary. That means you want your attention to move under a context that things end, you know? Now you can, instead of kind of thinking like, you can say the mind is going through a state where it's creating things, let's say. Let's say the mind, after it has created things, it goes into a state of maintaining things. After it has gone into a state of maintaining things, it goes into a state of, in some sense, taking back what it has given. Not, I mean, take like for example, breath. The breath. They say this. It's like um, in a certain Islamic cultural setting, there's a kind of saying they say where it's as if God can take your breath any moment. You know, so when you think of that, you become humble. That humility is a neutral observance. That neutral observance is the presence of aka soul. You know. Now, what would that mean? That would mean we have to acknowledge emptiness. Then we have to acknowledge, and the mind needs to, like I'm telling this, we have moved into the era of advanced communication and of the advanced communicators. That means it's like you as a human being don't need to just be able to uh, speak, read, and write. You as a human being, I say, when you look at, when you confront these four dimensions of potential movement, then it's like anything happens, your mind is familiar, you know. So the birth of familiarity is a sort of kind of keeping something static. It's like you're remembering something and you're remembering it to such a degree that it's as if that memory has become now. You know what I mean? So have an ability as a being in this plane of existence to see how things can be absent, how there's so many people, they say the statistics of stress and depression has increased, but on another level it's like it's because the failure to comprehend absence. Things come and go in this life, you know. So to be able to be comfortable with the void is like you have confronted the zero dimension. Now when we go to the singular, now from the singular dimension, it's like your mind having an ability to acknowledge things as one thing. That means nature began from the singular. We were all once a cell, and now we have become a complex human being, you know. So once you have an ability to confront the void, and once you have an ability to be okay with things being singular, that means if suddenly, if they said like, um, it'll be like this. It's like if they said, uh, okay, guys, I needed a quick intermission there. So we acknowledge zero, we acknowledge one, And without the void and the singular, duality cannot exist. The void is the precondition to the singular, the one dimension. The void and the singular are the preconditions to the dualistic, you know? And the void, the singular, and the dualistic are preconditions to infinity. There we go. So that's what I'm saying. That's how I see that if a person has an ability being like, okay, some moments in this life, there's nothing. Okay. And then the person's like, okay, some moments in this life, there's something singular. It's like in this singular can apply everything I said about this 0, 1 to infinity. These have an inner and outer influence. In your inner realms, it's an unconditional consideration. In front of your eyes, in your outer realms, it is a conditional. It's conditionally based. What does that mean? That means we can have unconditional infinite movement and we can have conditional infinite movement. Kind of like moving at hyperspeed. You're not moving at hyperspeed 20, but in that moment you can, you know. So I find that it's kind of like I'm taking a designer's approach to reality because I feel before I had meaning for stuff, before I learned language as a child, I was watching stuff. So I identified the way the psychology of the child is raised is that it's identifying with space and being. So it's as if the child is practicing existing before it learns language. Language exists in the dualistic dimension. To consider a language to an infinite language, my only response through my own search has been that it's geometric. We will be speaking a sort of infinite geometrical language. I don't know how that would be, but it is very possible to translate uh, words into geometry, concepts into geometrical shapes. I've said it in other talks. Language is the next great. Language is the Geometry is the next great language of all languages. Living geometry. So, anyways, the designer's approach is there. You can look at the design of things without having an emotion. You know, you can look at something without an emotion. You could look at something with emotion. Now, the emotion, anytime I feel emotions arise, they say, I remember it was in this Buddhist book where they said it's like, I think it was called the clear mirror. But, anyways, there was a suggestion that guys, it was at some point I started considering my inner life. And for a long time, I didn't care for the inner life. It was only after 2011 that I really began caring for my inner life and really figuring out what it is and why it's kind of there. I notice eventually, anytime I come to answer for myself, who am I? It's a projection, it's an action, an activity occurs. So the question by nature is an activity, and suggesting there was a state prior. So to even ask a question means you're changing the world. So it's as if a question, um, it's like you can't touch something without changing it, you know? When we become observant of all these states of mind, now, after acknowledging these four, anytime human being, it's just a natural thing built in our design that the moment we get access to something new, we want to do something with it. But for me, it's kind of like, okay, sorry for the long gaps, guys. It's unintended. But, anyways. Uh, I think I've pretty much shared everything. The major thing I have is that there's an unknown living part to it. That means if your whole existence was a mathematical equation, there's an unknown x variable. Now, that unknown x variable is the free will. That means there is an ability to consciously change. That means in the progression of our evolution as a creature, we can say we were unconscious. It's like when you look at animals, it's like their imagination is the ecosystem. They don't have a separate relationship with their ecosystem. But when you look at the human being, holy shit, not only can it, excuse my language, but not only can it see, not only does it have access to the way it can move in its environment, but it has access to another interpretation of the environment. That means our mind takes the world and copy pastes it. Ah, What is life beyond the movement of identification? Is it endless stability? Is it endless seeking of balance? Is it the new? Is it the future? Is the purpose of our past to get to see our future? Okay. There seems to be a lot of black holes in this talk. Here, guys, something I'm going to write in the chat section. The endless uh, ability for language to animate self. Okay? Now, that endless ability means it's an energetic relationship. That means you are an energetic being. What that means is you're not just like the container, you are the contained, that which is contained. Um, you're the content of the container. You know, that means my body is an object being observed by my mind in this moment. And my identity, ego, sense of self, whatever, that's subjective linguistic imagery that I'm keeping as the self. So it's a subject of observance. So if your mind is beyond objects and subjects, how can we identify? And that's why I say beyond if language is a dualistic technology, beyond there's two exits. You know, one is infinity, which is non-dual, and the other is void. So it's like our intelligence is oscillating between the infinity and the void when we become characters in a story. You know, guys, I'll tell you a situation here. I want to see which one people would choose. Um, how would I animate this? I actually don't know how to animate the two conditions, but I wanted to say like which one is smarter in the sense that I don't know. I don't know. It's between wanting something and wanting nothing, but I can't kind of metaphorize that right now. Sri Ramana Maharshi says meditation is your true nature. They speak about the abidance of self. They speak about the sense of self as the last stick thrown into the fire that has helped preserve all the other sticks. So as if it's like something has a value to you based on its utility, existentially, so you keep it, so there's a sense of self. But after some point, like Sri Ramana Maharshi saw that, like, the subjective self, it's like the last stick thrown into the fire. So evaporation of identity from the whole space becoming pure experience. So a movement towards being a field. So I think it's fair to say that the void will appear like a field to the singular, and the dualistic will appear a field to the singular, and even the infinite. The infinite is multiple. We're not just existing, and we're not just experiencing, and we're not just we can't, it's like we have to consider the limitations of our perception. But it doesn't mean just because we have limitations in sensory perception, the language should define a certain mode of living. For me, language is a technology that really you can use it in many ways. It's only when you identify with it that it gets messed up. That's when you can internally get hurt, when you identify with language, you know. When you don't identify with language, mainly it's because you're seeing something more than it. And that something more is how experience no longer is fragmented, and you get to kind of see who you were before you needed to be anything. And by the way, guys, feel free to ask anything due to the nature of these being a live stream. I've kind of reached the end of what I want to say for this talk, really. Is there free will in deep sleep? Is there even the concept of deep sleep in deep sleep? I don't know. All I know is that it's like eyes open and there is effort. Now, this effort, there can come a velocity to one's life, their direction and speed towards something. Some people could have a lot of direction but not have speed. Some people can have a lot of speed, not direction. But when you have both of them, most likely you are seeing something more important than the imbalance. So in emergencies, people balance themselves really quickly. But in like imagine a person, like imagine this story. This is another take on Pompeii, you know, what happened in Pompeii. Imagine this friend and these two friends are hanging out beside this volcano, and one friend is saying, "Man, yo, man, my life is so bad. I'm suffering. What is this? It's everything's against me. This world doesn't want me here. Why? You know?" And then suddenly, while he's saying this to the friend, a giant, like I don't know, what is it? Lava fragment kind of like falls in front of him. And it's like it starts raining and it falls. Let's say it started raining before, and the guy's like, "See, man, it's even raining right now when I'm saying my suffering." And then let's say the volcano came in, and in that person, the moment the guy sees the lava, it's like, okay, forget my inner depression or whatever. You instantly forget your suffering to run away from the lava. What does that mean? Instantaneously, you attained balance in your inner realms because the external realms became intense. And I don't think a truly an advanced civilization would mean a civilization without challenges. It doesn't mean that. There will be challenges. It's just that we are getting more of a sophisticated approach as a species to each challenge, right? And I'm suggesting that it has to be remodeled. That means it's kind of like there's certain, I could say certain actions at their time could have been intelligent. but it doesn't mean an intelligent action in one moment in history, if we continue to do it, is going to be an intelligent action in other moments. For me, religion was a strange way of a certain sequence of language attaining immortality in the minds of man. So that's really what fascinated me about religion, that it was a personal experience that made the allegiance, made the link of that person's context of living to that ideology. You know, for me, you should have a kind of modality is which is better, to take sides or to see both sides and go further. To see both sides and go further is the best. It's better than the middle way. You know? Even just only the middle way. You know, it's kind of the beyond component to it too. They asked this guy in I saw this video on a channel which I appreciate on YouTube. It's called Buddha at the Gas Pump, and this guy interviews. He interviews just a second, guys. I'm going to finish this story, and Dominic, I'll respond to what you're saying in the chat section. It's a good question. So, anyways, Richard Parker, if I'm correct, at Buddha at the Gas Pump, was interviewing this guy named Almas. Almas is also in the East means diamond. So this person is this very, very kind of advanced scientist, kind of a person who I believe started off atheist and then kind of began noticing some other things at the edge of his kind of scientific achievement. He has, like, I don't know, I think he had a PhD in science or something, like astrophysics or something. But anyway, the thing was, Richard Parker asked this guy, "Tell me about your history," and Almas, the man in the interview, gives such an incredible answer. His answer is like, "Okay, so there's a part of me, which is my individual history, something like that. Then he says there's my universal history. Then there's a part of me that has no history." And it was such a nice answer. And what he meant by that is, you want the history of my personality, or do you want the history of my attention in an existential plane, or do you want the history of that which is the inconceivable self? You know, it kind of like his answer translated to me like something like that. And that part where there is no history, me, is beyond language. It's pretty much the edge of it is the gate of it is the language threshold. It's kind of like pretty much two things are happening. Either the known is moving the unknown and calling it free will, or the unknown is moving the known and the known has the free will to call it the divine will. So Dominic, now I'm looking at your question. You say, is language and or thoughts transfer from the above or below, head or soul? So this is something cool, that it means you, Dominic, you're still considering things in a local state. You're still trying to find the location for your mind. That means this is the confrontation of the zero dimension. That means when you confront the zero dimension, you see the presence of unknown instantaneous attention. That presence of unknown instantaneous attention means that it's like, how can I tell you? It's like if you don't move, you see how the world moves. If you move, you see yourself moving to interpret the world. So for me, language is where we can say. So let me ask you this: in I would say it's like this. If you want controlled language, that means you want language to move in accordance to the condition you give to it. That's a different state of mind than the unconditional witness. Now, I feel it's like there's a navigation required. That means people in history have been looking for like a shortcut and a one shot answer, you know? But really, it's about piloting. Shri Nisargadatta Maharaj, sorry, Nisargadatta Mar, am I saying it right? Shri Nisargadatta, let's say, he has this incredible quote where he says, "When I see that I am nothing, that is wisdom." And so I want to explain that part of the quote. It has a bunch of parts. I'll tell you this part. He says, "When I see that I am nothing, that is wisdom." And then so is it that when you see you're nothing, it's wisdom because you're acknowledging the void, so you won't freak out when you realize the void is the void, you know. So then he says, "When I see that I am everything, that is love." And so what does that mean? How is seeing that you are everything love? It means a sort of acknowledgement of a living presence in the whole moment, not just a certain part of the moment. It's kind of like we've been trying to, in known ways, uncover the unknown, the battle of consciousness with the unconscious. And there are ways where the unknown moves the known. And those are ways where you see it can't be too linguistic. That means if you want the outer world to still be like your inner realms, let me tell you, there are some voices that come from views. So think of it this way: it's like the voice of a person can be different. What they speak about can be different in accordance to their sight being on a branch or them having an aerial view of the whole forest. So it's, believe it or not, even prior to language, vision is a precondition to language. You know, we need to see stuff to talk about that stuff. You know, that means if there was no objects, if it was just sometimes I've closed my eyes and I've wondered, what if this was the beginning of existence? Like it was just pitch black emptiness and there was just an awareness, right? What if it's as if evolution is the intelligence of the universal sector unmasking itself, you know? For me, my relationship with language is that I don't, how can I tell you? It's hard trying to just consider static laws to a dynamic universe, a dynamic changing universe. You know, for me, it feels a bit strange, you know, that everything is changing, but the ideology is choosing to remain the same. Can it ever be the same? That means when you woke up yesterday and when you woke up today, is today like yesterday? And you're like, no, it's like to the mind, it's a new day. But body speaking, there is no day and night. It's just phenomena that's here. The body's just existing, and then the plane of existence appears non-existential. And then the pilot navigates from this plane of existence into whatever they choose, you know? So for me, the grand puzzle is like, imagine if someone could say something to all, just so I'm gonna go poetic mode here. Imagine there came a person who began speaking to all souls of the plane of existence. That means with all these countless galaxies and stars, imagine they all of them could hear, you know, this person. And this person shouts at the cosmos and says it is no longer about wanting to go somewhere better. It's about seeing where you are now. And when you realize that, suddenly it's as if our civilization, and let's say in the future there's another galactic civilization, another civilization in our galaxy. Imagine we suddenly meet and our civilizations become friends. Because we're like, yo, it's been empty so long. We feel like we're deserted on an island if we find another galactic thing. You know, when even the concept of energy becomes unconditional for you, when your mind learns to hold the physical plane gently, the winds of evolution move all at that point. So, Dominic, I'm looking at the chat section now. You say, no thing, everything, something is all focusing on thing, light, and knowledge. And yes, one can question, ponder, accept thing, but there is the essence to things. So my question is as follows: is that is my, so my question is as follow: is things like thoughts, emotion, sub or objective, are they just effects or side effects of the essence? Okay, that's a great question. I realize I'm playing a game from within, and there is many possibilities within the box vessel. Yeah. First of all, nice question. I think it's, yeah, I've pondered on the mere presence of phenomena and its levels of value, and that's why I kind of said those four dimensions, because really it's clay. Energy is in just, if you really look at what free will is, it is influential expression of some sort. That means I think it's like when you wonder about the direction of things, of course your attention first sees the limitations, and in today's society we don't even conceive of limitless. We think we can't have limitless intelligence. Some dude came and made an IQ test, and the poor species had to all measure in accordance to a certain questions. Do you know how much of life the intelligence is dynamic? It's not static. You won't know until you try. It's like only with your engagement the reality simulates anew. So it's kind of like, what do we do with free will? When we have it. And some people were like, if we wonder how we have it, it's like we have no choice but to have free will, as Christopher Hitchens is known to say. So if our choice one tries to reverse engineer itself back into its source and see where it came from and sees that it's unconditional. So when we say nothing from nothing came something, and like such as the Big Bang theory, that nothing that becomes something, it's like, think of it this way. Life moves in known ways and unknown ways. So if life is something that there is a tension in the moment, in the conscious living moment, and it moves, it has to confront, yeah, sure, it will go in environments where it will have kind of familiarity patterns. That means you've witnessed something before, and when you go in that room, because you know what it is, it's like that object suddenly has more meaning. Imagine your uncle was lumberjack. And it's as if like when you see an axe, your mind has seen how an axe moves a lot. It's as if you have many familiarity patterns. This is why practice was important, because it was as if adding dimensions to the art form, you know? In certain repetition is unjustified, in certain contexts it's justified. And so from this nothing to something is from the unconditional to the conditional. Do you see what I mean? So if we were to reverse engineer back, we would see what was before existence, and it would be an absence of existence. So that absence means that we can't perceive as an individual object, or subjectified object. And it doesn't mean that nothing is nothing. So the unconditional is intelligent, I'm saying I realize that, okay, the known parts of my day, like what I have access to in the moment that is known, that tends to be governed by the intelligence of my free will. But I've also noticed in certain unknown moments there's something more. And for a long time I wondered, why are the angels hidden? I wondered I was raised in a theocratical society, you know, in the early years of my life. And so I, like, nowadays people have a very, they frown upon, right? But when my childhood, it's like religion was like a collective morality. It's as if people understood each other because they were in the same story, you know? They were part, it's like religion had a sort of important factor of community to it, you know? So you can say some of the first beginning communities, you know, that started making advancements were religious. And why were they religious? Because it was the first time a story could be accessed by many people. It wasn't the first time, of course, I'm saying, but it was in the 6th century. That was like, holy shit, civilization advanced to a story that everybody could become a part of. Now, as we evolved, we realized we went from object worship, idol worship, and they slapped, and time, the great hand of time, slapped these idols out of our hand and said no. It's as if man picked up an object and looked at the endless sky of time, and it was like, okay, is this God? And time slapped the object out of man's hand. It's like, no, wrong answer, you know, keep looking. And so man suddenly picked up the subject, picked up thought, picked up language. Language began, our attention went to the inner sophistication of reality. Language was the greatest evolution, one of the greatest advancements of the subjective self. It was the birth, and the maintenance and the preservation of that inner life. So language is something, as is that it's as if I am in a love and hate relationship with it. I love it in certain moments, and then in certain moments I can see it's savage. I have literally gone into countries and I've seen decent people. It's like every person has their own unique decency. Every person is fine. But I'm saying the limitation that language is denying you of the discovery of the archetypes that will release the true self into the world, you know, while you can. There was a time where, like, I guess I could kind of say it's like a hobby, but it's more like a natural when the feeling comes for it. I sometimes go into states, like I sit down, and not with the thought that it's a meditation or something. You only need meditation because the person thinks they're behind. When you chase the butterfly, oh, you need endless teachings till the end of time. You know, you need to be shared endless truths when you're chasing the butterfly and you're a step behind, you feel. But when you sit among the flowers and among your true nature, you see, human beings are a part of nature. That means a robot would look at a human being and be like, whoa, man, how come I'm not natural? In the domain of the free will, life can be endlessly sculpted. There's an unconditional creative freedom in certain domains and phases of free will. But in certain states, it's as if like it's where the attention goes. And for me, when I realized it's as if every person has their own DNA, sort of every person is, we're not clones of one another, we're all unique, right? So that uniqueness, I was thinking that means nobody has access, nobody other than me can see through my eyes. And then I suddenly started crying, and then laughing. It's like the laughter and crying became simultaneous. And let me tell you why I started crying. I started crying because I had spent so long living a certain way only to see the hollowness of it. It's as if for a millisecond there was a glitch in the system, and it tore me apart internally, But as I felt my past was broken, I noticed it's like the future is still coming. And that's the thing, that regardless of the ideological constitution in the moment, there is something more. It's like, advanced civilization coming to theaters near you, coming soon, you know? So Nathan, I'm just reading your comment in the chat section. I feel there are inactive states, but their activity is the potential, you know? So you can say it's like seeing the energy move from having a potential. That means yes, it's technically inactive, but doesn't mean it can never be active. That means there is an inbuilt potential. Sometimes I have thought like it's like Albert Einstein has this quote where he says, um, let me find the exact quote, but it's kind of funny what he says. He says, okay, there we go. Okay, so guys, check it out. Albert Einstein says only two things are infinite: the universe and human stupidity. And I'm not sure about the former. So even Einstein is entertaining, regardless of his cultural interpretation. But he's entertaining the universe as being an infinite thing and a finite thing. If it's an infinite thing, that means it had no beginning and an end, and that means the concept of things beginning and ending is an illusion. That means it's like the temporary is existing in an eternal system. So what is temporary? That's a sort of infinite notion to the universe. Or he may even consider the infinity just space oriented wise. That means he's just saying it's endless, endless, endless. There's no edge to the field. That means we are thinking like it's like the planet can be said to be spherical, but the whole cosmos we can never know that shape, and it's like we're thinking as if it's endless. It doesn't have an edge. It's a dimension where there is no edges, you know no edges of considerations of something being finite. I think free will, we can't say it's always present, because in deep sleep, what has free will? Can you answer me? Can you tell me that? Like, is it an object? Is it a subject? Is it so unknown that it's like consciousness of sight? Is it a relationship with images? For me, deep sleep is not a relationship with images. It's like, I don't know. I like it for me, but I've had moments where it's kind of strange, where the deep sleep was like a video game paused, and suddenly the pause came back. It was as if like the prime moving force of intelligence stopped being something to itself for a moment. It's honestly, deep sleep to me is like getting out of the Iron Man suit of existence. So it means it doesn't mean it's we will comprehend it in this form. In this, it's like there's our plane of existence is it's like, let me tell you this. This is an argument that can be made, I guess, for something not being, for something being infinite. Or let me move past that actually. Okay, so Nathan, let me tell you, what you're saying is just difference in terminology. That's not called consciousness. That's called, some people would argue that's called awareness. Okay, that means consciousness means there has to be a relationship. Consciousness is zero dimension relationship with the one dimension. Do you know? But awareness is just so let me say this: consciousness is the relationship of the singular with a dualistic dimension. Awareness is the relationship of the zero with one. So I'm telling you, it's awareness. It's not relationship based. It has no relationship with a relationship to the object or subject. So for me, what I'm saying is that, I see what you're saying. You're saying that if we say there is something, how could that something not be? You know, that means, yeah, true, the body exists. That means even though there's deep sleep, it doesn't mean our whole body and the universe vanished in deep sleep. It just means the mind slept. That's what it means. And it's really like, it's just, guys, it's in the words. Like, we use the word, what are we right now? Life forms. What are we? Human beings. Just look at those words. So when you look at the word life form, there's a life component, the unknown, and then there's the form, all the shapes and geometry your mind has ever witnessed. Every corner of a room, every line, every branch, movement of a branch, your mind is kind of being like snap, is recording everything. And these are built in kind of rhythms. So what I'm saying is that when you hear something, trust me, many senses of self, you are hearing that from your attention being active through various memories. You know. You see, guys, language cannot contain, language cannot lead to an absolute. That means don't treat language as an absolute, guys. I mean, that's something where it's as if like the person still wants their inner realms to be the outer realms to be their inner realms. It's strange, but it's like I just ask myself constantly, like, what would an advanced civilization on Earth look like? And I see we're kind of behaving in a certain way right now, but I feel a new technology means a new way of looking at things. I feel inner technologies need to evolve before the external technologies can fully evolve. The inner technology is language, so I've spoken about that like pretty much every day. But it's like once you become conscious of language, then you have to begin considering notions of existential independence. So you're wondering for the first time, is my experience independent of my existence? Could my experience be continuous but my existence temporary? That means could the eternal be watching the temporary right now? And if we identify with the temporary component of the moment or interpretation of the moment, then we're temporary by design. So really it's the evolution of human attention in the inner realms and the outer. Now the inner realms is something that hasn't been spoken about. And I got shocked. I got shocked that how can an educational system declare itself as a position of knowing when it doesn't know what the mind is. So it has all been kind of become it's like educational systems. I This is a very intense statement for me to say, but I feel we still haven't had an educational system. It's like it's if education is not the 1900s soldiers had to run from one bunker to another, and they had to from in one bunker memorize all the information instantly comprehend what was the news, what was the thing for the glory of the empire, and quickly run to the other side and share the information exactly on point and very accurate. This is why I felt that it's like countries that have experienced large wars, the intelligent of their demand of their own intelligence has been strangely more. But anyways, I don't want to. Let me kind of come back like I feel the ultimate evolution of education is pretty much to create an advanced civilization that rather than is fighting with itself, it has become unified in the grander exploration of the unknown. So if like in the movie Independence Day, an alien civilization attacks us, You know, what do we do? All human beings are like, yo, why are we fighting ourselves? It's like, let's kick this thing off our turf. Then we fight. We paused our fights or whatever, right? We resume our fights or whatever, right? So it was as if an instant unification to challenge a greater force that was challenging everybody. That was a sort of rational viewpoint, you know? So in that moment, I am saying we have to come into that term that more than us thinking we know as creatures, we should be more fascinated by the unknown. That means the dynamic of a teacher student should change to literally, let me, this is gonna, I'm being poetic here, like just entertain this as a possibility, okay? But I'm not saying this is my ultimate idea on this, but like right now it's like teacher and student, okay? Students go in, they listen to the teacher, they're like, great, 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 you know, and then they come back and they look at their grades and they're like, not great, not great. And so I'm saying the educational system is one-sided. First of all, it doesn't make sense after being inspired by like the kind of war system, like in a society where I was saying like the gosh, what was that? When the society needed soldiers, schools were based on like getting recruiting those kind of soldiers. So the educational system got possessed by the demands of wartime. You know, so and it hasn't. Some people say it hasn't changed. It has kind of morphed into some sorts of new ways. But I'm saying like ultimately the testing ground. It's like they're treating the child's mind like it's they're at knowledge to be knowledge to get to they're training soldiers. Okay, so soldiers for an economical war. I mean, people go to the educational system not for knowledge. I think not everybody goes there for knowledge. I think many people go there so they can just survive. Most people, to know more about their universe, it has to be a desire of their survival. You know, but they don't want to. It's like when the survival is satisfied, it's as if like we won't ask the big questions anymore. I see the evolution of the educational system into no longer teacher student, 8 billion unique viewpoints on life can't all go in. So rather than thinking this, we need to evoke expression. So that means in a room with 300 people, only one person speaking is ridiculous. Now, what does that mean? I mean, it's not possible all 300 people to speak at the same time and hear one another, but I'm saying like it's just the suggestion that every person's mind contains hidden geometry, hidden dimensions, okay, hidden possibilities. It's like right now your future is not active, but your potential is dictating it, you know? I felt rather than it being kind of like I feel the greatest questions should be given to every mind to answer. I feel it should be there should be a global initiative, as if like we want to create explorer units into of the finding. Here's the thing: something becomes important to you when it has value, and when there comes an educational curriculum that is valuable to the person, it will be an educational curriculum that is engaging. That means the child, the being doesn't go into that system and feel reduced. You know. It has to do with dynamism, with expression, with intelligence, having to do with awareness of what you're directly experiencing, not just the ideological constitution or subjective landscapes of perception. You know, speech, of course, by nature, we have to consider, you know, language. But Life appears as many things to many people. In one of my poems, I had said, the earth faces many faces, and many faces face the earth. And that means the individual has a multidimensional relationship with the environment, but the environment has a singular relationship with the individual. We are, the ecosystem is a part of us. After we the food chain, there was a disconnect. No longer imagination, nature was responsible for our imagination. The subjective self became like, you know how in the movie 300, the dude like threw his kid into a jungle with a spear, and it's like, when you kill a wolf by jumping backwards, then we can talk. So in the same way, I feel children who have, like, think about it, guys. They say children have wild imaginations, and as they grow up, that imagination kind of subsides. So if children have the greatest imagination, how do we get the hardest problems in our civilization to the eyes of the children of the newer generations, to get them concerned? And I found, like, it has to become participation oriented. So how do we create a civilization that the individual cares to participate in it? So that would be very difficult. It has to be 50% the individual has to abide and 50% the civilization has to abide. That means, think of it this way. You are roommates with your civilization. There was a quote by a man named Tilopa. Um, Let me find the exact quote. Okay, here, check this out. This quote, guys, is definitely a quote that has incredible architecture. For me, language has architecture, by the way. So Tilopa, um, from Tibetan Buddhism, Tilopa tells us, let go of what has passed. Let go of what may come. Let go of what is happening now. Don't to figure anything out. Don't try to make anything happen. Relax right now and rest. And what this means is, when your mind is at rest, everything is, that infinite dimension becomes accessible. So for me, when if I have the model of my endurance, the archetypal kind of, how my archetype chooses to endure, how long my archetype, the sense of self exists, like the archetypal life cycle, the life cycle of an archetype in conscious vision. Yeah, Tilopa, what he's saying is that rest, that relaxation. That relaxation means the ultimate forgiveness of the external realm to ever impose anything in your inner realms. When you no longer have any emotions to the outer realm, it doesn't mean there is no emotions. It doesn't mean there's emotions become nature's rhythms. When I say nature's rhythms, I mean it's like they become like weather. Like, this is a cool way to see that one's even relationship with subjectivity. It's like the person who's stressed, hey man, it's raining in your mind, like, get an umbrella or something. So it's a weather, it's a condition that it will changes. Nobody can really be like, tell me this, how can any person be stressed when their sense of self is new every day? So it's like, which self is sad? It's like who is what is the who, or who is the who that has depression? That means the person, they went and got statistics, and they're like, this many people are depressed, you know and it's like, who? who is depressed, and they're like, the person, man, the person, the guy's depressed, you know, and like so many people in society are depressed, man. And then you're like, okay, but who? That when that person in that moment is which self? The self they were yesterday, the self they will be. Which self is depressed? Do you see? So it's like unknown state of potential, and then the way you make it kinetic. If you're, it's like how Paul Dirac, this scientist, said, if there is an equation to kind of explain the whole of the universe, it needs to be a beautiful one. You know, and it's like science has to care less for explosions and more for the of exploring more complexity. For me, meditation is an advanced usage of a simple mode of a simple movement of attention. Science, and for me, is a method of complexity. We are not like that's why in earlier talks I would say science is mighty. Why? Because it's fearless, because it sees the unknown and it charges it, you know? But the issue is when the science has to translate back into the cultural program, so that means scientific findings, you can't kind of give them a story. They're just a finding. They're an explanation. You know, a sort of you can say a mathematical language oriented explanation. You know. And that is it for me. When I was younger, it was a relationship with what I knew. That means if I felt like I wasn't aware of something happening in my environment, I felt like a fool, you know. And then inevitably I realized, oh my God, I can't become aware of all these things in my attention. That means the attention is bound to the body. And what directs this physical body? We say it is a mind. And what is that mind? That mind comes across to itself as a character in a story. And this character in a story is necessary. The cultural programs and all of this that are dependent on language are necessary for the advancement of the civilization. That means it's kind of realizing it's like there is never a like a smooth flight. There's turbulence in this plane of existence. What does that mean? That means even if we had all the right ways to act, the conditions of our playing of the field would be different. Think of it this way. Right now, all our cities are connected to the ground. But imagine like this is the year, I don't know, let's say 2500, and there's a tsunami happening in Japan, and all the buildings, it's like the whole city lifts up into the air, lifts up into the air as if the city is a ship. You know what I mean? That would, so it means the moment this whole city lifts up, the tsunami or whatever the way the earth is moving, no longer those conditions define what happens to the city. You know? Tilopa has this other saying. He says, cut the mind at its root and rest in naked awareness. And it's so important for you to trust the unknown in the sense that that naked awareness is unconditional being. And if you are going into that unconditional unknown being with an arc, with a design, like with an it's like if you treat the unknown as a store where you want to buy something from it, like that's confusion on multiple levels. Do you know what I mean? That means not only is the universe scolding the person on this side of the veil, but the universe is also scolding the person on the other side of the veil. You know, the agency, invisible agency on the other side of the veil, right? If they choose to consider it. For me, naked awareness means an awareness for language. The mind is how knowledge has branched out. Various ways of knowing have come into place. For me, the grand question is how do we get the inner realms of 8 billion human beings efficiently how do we have 8 billion inner realms contribute to the advanced civilization in the external realm? That's how I'm thinking, you know? That means it's like when your sense of self becomes humanity, your attention is like, what's next? And you see the the grand architecture of a civilization that in its advancement, it's not just externally advanced, it's internally advanced. That means it's as if like, I think, where else can dimensions go? Either towards the multiple or towards the void. So we have to entertain multidimensional truths, because what else would we do in nothingness? So ultimately, we can say the mind exists, the mind is driven towards multidimensionality, the body is driven to the void. And right now, at the moment, there is an awareness of the intersection of these. So for me, it was like I suddenly realized, if I cannot care for my own voice, why should others? When I realized, if I don't care for my intelligence, why should others? And that's when a kind of sheep roared. So, guys, I'll tell you this. Anything you look at can get multiple angles. To be aware of the angles means that you have to also be aware you're not defined by them. That means when you look at objects in the room, that object doesn't define you. But when you look in your inner realms, you see a subject is defining you. It's like, what is the ego but the subject inhabited in that moment? You see, guys, it's an ability to look at the picture before um, personalization. Sometimes I looked at rationality and just the ability to articulate something in accordance to a pattern, you know, a pattern of recognition. So I would say it's like the edge of language is infinite geometry or the void. That means silence or movement of speech at unfathomable, the movement of understanding at an unfathomable speed. Imagine there was a, like, for example, like juice. Like there was this juice that like the person drank, and they got like 4 years of their all the ideas they would get from an educational system. They suddenly got like their whole degree. That means, imagine in the workplaces in the future, the job training is the person drinks of this liquid and suddenly knows everything about how to do the job. I think I'm going to read something I wrote in 2015, this kind of poetic work, and then I'll end off, guys. Feel I should read. Let me see, where is it? Okay, so I'm reading number 17 of the 35 poems of this book called Eternity's Flame. that I wrote in 2015. It's like a kind of poetic, like inner haiku kind of thing. So this poem's called Coming Home. The moment is the greatest house ever built. For what is outside and inside in origin remains the same. Mind, body, and speech like to play games. But beyond opposites, could nothing be the opposite of the opposite? Don't think about this too much. Rather be what you are, for words come and go. But your essence cannot deceive. As all beings come home, the moment was always free. Words come and go. Worlds come and go. Then what would freedom be dependent based on if there's everything is changing? So it would mean the unconditional instantaneous awareness that there is awareness. That is the ultimate. What else can it be? It has to be all inclusive, means no singular allegiance to a singular ideological system will satisfy it. It's too living to be shaped. It's like treating a person like um, uh, like a mind or like just a body, you know? The way I see it's like a person can just see someone and just see them as a body and just be drawn to that. Or the person can see, okay, I see an outer appearance, but what is the inner appearance? And that inner appearance, thanks to the engineers of language, the pioneers of language, is something where it's the unknown factor. When you start seeing are not just people, they are minds. When you see like all the people on earth is not, it's not, even though it appears as if we're in one room. Here's the cool thing. Let me tell you what's going to happen. Overpopulation is a problem because we're all thinking about it two-dimensionally. If we were thinking about overpopulation three-dimensionally, means what if we were living in our skies? I've talked about like sky cities in my science fiction. And so I think that would automatically be a resolution, you know? That isn't, wouldn't it be an ingenious idea to kind of have chunks of Earth in the sky? Like have like, like imagine, this is super futuristic in regards to like realistically talking about it, but it's like, instead of just having the city be in the sky, we have nature in the sky. Imagine one child is running at the edge of a forest and suddenly sees that, oh my God, the edge of the forest is on clouds, is above clouds. Like, how fascinating would that be? So, what that means is in two-dimensional problems sometimes have very simple three-dimensional answers, you know? So, guys, I want to open it up to the audience. Out of 1 to 35, the first person to say a number, I'll read that, and then we'll reach our destination for this flight. Okay, so Guys, there's 6 viewers right now, so I'm gonna read the poem. It says, patient and gracious. Um, Let me see if I've written this right. Okay, so guys, this is strange. I'm just gonna stick true to the poem. It says patient and gracious absolement. Absolement. I don't know if I did that intentionally or it was a typo, but I think I did it intentionally. That's why. Anyways, once you are, this is the poem. Once you are the here and now, what is the next teaching when there is no student? Patience and grace are the wings of the divine. Darkness and folly is just a smudge on an ever expanding mirror. How can life be more than words? Close this book, then close your eyes and feel how all life is beyond interpretable signs. Oh, here, guys, it's a typo. The greatest absolvement, or maybe is that Jesus? Sorry, guys, just hang in there. Um, yeah, so it's I don't know. I just wrote absolvement, but that's technically not a word. But anyways, the greatest the greatest absolvement, or let's say absolution, is how the voice of God through patience and grace reveals the supreme universal tongue. Oh my God! And the next poem afterwards is the supreme universal tongue. Once an angel kissed my ignorance away. Could the beloved be beyond all mistakes? Once peace has weaved a cloth made of love, could divine movement be only observed in divine stillness? Some men look at ponds and are too busy seeing sheep and lions trying to be free. What makes the drop realize the grandest ocean within? The supreme universal tongue is how simultaneously through every speck of reality we all exist. So that means like the voice of man is the universal tongue means man's mind is the voice of the cosmos, is a voice in the, not just in the cosmos, is the voice of the cosmos. So guys, I'll read the next poem too. It says, when the seasons pass you by, that's the poem. Who stands knocking with temporal fingers upon eternity's door? What makes gold wonder if silver has a value before the alchemy? Such words are only here to give truce to the seeker within. Do not underestimate the roots of the tree, even though they cannot be seen. For the branches of knowledge may think the fruit only comes from them, but those who know they are connected to all life are free beyond words. You're not just here, but everywhere that consciousness allows. The playful are the first to be revealed, the secrets of destiny. Who can be so nameless that the origin of all names is the here and now? When the seasons pass you by, what is truly alive cannot die. What is truly alive cannot die. Yeah, that's what's up. So, anyways, guys, I want to thank the listeners. I treat these talks kind of like a digital notepad, you know, and I feel the way the inner realms, the technology is kept active is that you have to find, extract importance out of this existential phenomenon, out of this movement in existence. Your free will is an evolutionary update. Even though when we look at life in mystical angles, we do reach a sort of kind of in this in just like how there's a potential that video games are going to become indistinguishable from reality. That's like the individual consciousness becoming indistinguishable from its collective being. So what does that mean? That means we're realizing where the thoughts of we either like, how can I say it? We're the thoughts of nature, or nature is our thought. You know, it's not easy being a human being, but it's not that hard either, you know? Every person, think of it this way. Just like how there's a bunch of apps open on a phone, there is various narratives and movement of language, and the attention is multidimensional. The body is the phenomenon, what is seen, the contents of your moment I can't have dimensions. The attention is kind of dimensionless. Anyways, thanks for tuning in, guys. I hope this episode was helpful.